גם שם הייתי בר מזל, כי השמיים או הגורל או שניהם גם יחד אפשרו לי לחזור מהגיהנום.
Today we are going to talk about Noah Klieger and the film Box for Life. And Noah Klieger is a great journalist that is not with us now, sadly, but we have his daughter Iris, who is going to talk about the life of Noah Klieger. Yes, please, Iris.
My father, Noah Klieger, I can say my own prisoner from Auschwitz. Number on the hand, it was tattoo 172-345. That's my private prisoner that survived the unbelievable stories, like a lot of survivors from this terrible camp, Auschwitz. He born in Strasbourg. He arrived to Belgium with his family. He was 15 years old, and he was making a lot of works for the Jewish Machteret Yehudit, how to call this, that with like Baldar, he helped to survive 257 young girls and boys, to move them to Switzerland with papers unreal, with names
With fake
exactly
passports.
fake passports. And at the end of the last day, before he wants to do it by himself, he's the best friend of him. Ask him, Noach, could you do a favor? I want to pass to Switzerland with my girlfriend that I want to be with her. Could you change with me? You do it tomorrow, I will do it today. And my father said, okay, no problem. That was the end of the story. The day after, the day that he wants to run away also, the German catch him and he's another guy and told them go to the bathroom with me. And my father knew that this is the end of the story. The German will find. He told him, take off your pants, because he wants to see if he's Jewish or not. Of course, that was the end of the beginning of the starting, that he sent to Auschwitz camp. And for this moment, he doesn't know what happened to his family. My grandfather and my parents of my father, Tekla and Bernard, they were been also in Auschwitz. Tekla was in Birkenau camp. The father of my grandfather, the father of Noach, he was a very famous writer in France, and that gave him some points, if we can say it like this, that he got a job to write the names every day about the list of the Jewish that's still alive in the camp. So like this, he knew that his son survived every day because he saw the name in the list. But about the women, he doesn't know nothing about his wife. He saw the other families by one, brothers, nephew, every day that they are not in the list. So like this, my grandfather knew what happened to the others that not survived. But the last day before the march of death, he knew that his son still alive, but that was the end of his knowing, because the march of death go out from the camp, and my father survived these terrible things. One of the story, I will close it, that this family, the family Klieger, they didn't knew that they are the only family, Papa, Papa, Mama, and a son survived from the Auschwitz terrible camp. After the war, my grandmother, she was a sewing, and she was a small woman. She worked on after the war to fix everybody that come back from the camp was very thin. So she's sewing to make a small fixing, and when she looked up, it is a rampa. She was sitting on a rampa, and when she looked up, she saw her husband, Bernard, and like this they met. The parents, my grandfather and her wife.
It was in the camp?
It was after the war.
After the war.
And in this moment, they don't know if their son survived. And they start looking after him. They return back to Belgium, to Brussels, and they look for him. And also my father, after the war, go to Brussels to look for the relative if they survive, to look for the parents. And this is from God. They sitting on a tram, number 5. And my father sitting like this, and they standing on the balcony of the tram. And in 1 minute, it's what's happening. That my grandmother, she looked at her on my father. He was so thin, but she said, "Bernard, this is not our Klieger son, like this." And that was a very happy end story about the family that survived.
So her son was where?
My father. No,
yes.
This is her son, my father, that
And
survived.
she recognized him, he was just passing
He
by.
was so thin, so she cannot recognize him at the beginning, but the eyes, the blue eyes, that's the reason that he has a looking like not Jewish. So that's give him the points to help for doing things like he's a Belgian Flemish guy. He spoke Flemish. He spoke 12 languages, so it's helping to help. And he got the sign of the Jewish survivor people. Jewish. There is Bnei Brit in Israel. They have big ceremony when they found that he helped for 57 Jewish young girls. After he died, we got a big, like medallion.
How did he survive?
I can tell you that when I was a 5 years old girl, I was always asking what is the number that you do in the hand, and I do the same number in my hand to be like my father without understand what it's meaning. And one day I asked him, "Daddy, what is this number?" He doesn't know what to tell me. He asked my mother in French. They spoke together French. And what should I tell to a small child? I cannot speak Holocaust to a small child. And he say something, but after 1 year, when I was 6 years, when I was in the first grade, I come back again and I said, "You have to tell me why there is a tattoo in your hand." And that's the moment that he decided to start to tell me the story, but not the bad story. Every story, when he told me during I was growing, and after it's returned back with my children, his grandchildren, to tell the story with a happy end and with a lot of optimism, because he was a surviving that speak about the Holocaust. There was a lot of survivors that didn't speak with the families, but he was the one who wants to speak and tell again and again that never we will forget. And he do it by his tact. When he say the story, I asked him how you survive. Every time he said, "It's a miracle. We cannot explain Holocaust," he said. "We just tell story about Holocaust, our destiny, but we cannot explain because nobody can understood what's happened in all the camps, the awful, that 6 million murdered Jewish." And one of the very very special story that a director took and made a film about the story of my father. It's called Box of Life. It's a story that when he was very thin, 38 kilo, you see, with my mother. This is Yossi, the photographer that coming to the Mitzad HaChaim every year for all this, and he knows my father very well, and that was the last Mitzad HaChaim that he came, because after 2016, in 17 he cannot come, and in 18 he was died in December. But he did almost all the March of Life from the beginning. So the Box of Life means that when he was 38 kilo, every day he said, but you know what's that? Yes, but that was in Geneva. זה לא? This is not in Geneva? This is when he was with the... there was a couple times before he was a soldier, because he's very young here. He came with this is the biggest son, my son, that after my dad...
What's his name?
Yuval. And he was in the Navy. And when he was 14 years, my father took him to Geneva, to the UN, in the International Holocaust Day, the 27th of January. And this guy, Yuval, was speaking to all the diplomatics in the Geneva UN, and explained them, asked them, don't forget my grandfather, and don't forget the survivors, because we are the grandchild, and we want to ask all the world to remember. He was so young to say it in English, and it was very, very insistent, But then we go, all the family, to make a tour with my father in Auschwitz, that he make us the explanation from Marcha to Krakow and to Auschwitz. And he was already 60. And then, when he was already a soldier in the Navy, my father got an invitation 5 years ago, to be a guest on the UN in New York in the Holocaust International Day. And my father was insist that if he will come to speak to the whole world and the diplomatics there, he insists that my son, that was a soldier in the Navy, will be on the stage with him in the uniform of the Navy. But this was not logic, because the story, they didn't permit in the UN that nobody would be with uniform of soldiers. And my father knew this. He was a little... and he said to my son, you put your uniform in the suitcase, it will be okay. And while we arrived to the entrance of the UN, the building, the soldiers in the entrance said, he cannot come inside with the uniform, he should change his clothes. So my father said, if he is not coming in with this uniform, I will not speak today in the UN. And that was another victim, because he was the only one that do what he wants there. And all the world saw that the soldiers in Navy uniform was next to him like this, to remember all the survivors and the 6 million that murdered. The boxing of life, it's a story that around my family, because every time when we have some problem, my father said, or some crisis, he remind us how we can survive with the story with boxing. I will explain what is the story. When he asked the SS officer, or I can say this is the big officer of the camp of Auschwitz, the awful man. He likes boxing and he wants to have a group in a prisoner that will make him a show. So he asked who knows how to boxing. And my father, without thinking, just do like this. He was
And
a brave guy.
he knew boxing?
No, nothing in boxing, nothing. Just know how to ride bicycle, that was a professional, but nothing about boxing. In this moment, he doesn't know that he is going to be against a very champion boxer in the camp. Yun Peretz.
Also Jewish?
Jewish, the famous one, Yun Peretz, a Tunisia boxing that were new already.
What's his name? Perez?
Jan Peretz.
Jan Perez.
Yes. And there was a lot from Saloniki.
And where was he from? From
Tunis.
Tunis.
Yes. And at the first moment that the SS guy said, okay, do start training, because every night we will do a war, a competition. For a show, he used this prisoner that they don't have food, no clothes, in a minus 20 degrees, but he wants a show, the Nazis. My father starts doing like one like this, two like this. At the 1 minute, young parents saw this. And so he go to my father and said, you don't know how to boxing. That's right. He said, yes, but I want 1 liter of soup because I'm starving and I cannot survive if I will not eat. I need it. So the Jewish to Jewish, they have an agreement that they will play a game. He will give him some box that will fall down. But then when my father will give him back, he will got some kilo. He got some real boxing from a very good one. And that was give him to survive for the camp in Auschwitz. One of the miracles, because the SS believed that he was one of the boxing experience professional, and this was very sad story at the end, because this young parents was helped to my father survive in the camp and give him every day 1 liter soup more. But young parents was with my father in the death of March.
The March of Death.
Yeah, the March of Death. And the end of this story, it's awful. My father said every time this story again and again, that Jan Peretz was very kindly, and he saw that the people in March of Death looking for food because there was nothing. So he kept bread, and he wants to give it to some of the prisoner next to him. The guy with the gun from the SS saw this, and he shot him. And the minute he died, so he shot Jan Peretz. That was the end of the story of Jan Peretz. There is a movie about this that my father speaks about the end of the life of Jan Peretz.
Your father saw this?
Of course, he was a witness for this awful, and he was crying every time when he said this, because Jan Peretz gave my father the boxing survivor. This is the movie about my father boxing life. And I have to tell you a private story about boxing, how it's influenced the second generation at home. He said on the UN stage, it was in 2016, he said these words: my life is going to be not for long because I'm an old guy. But I worried that after the end of the survivor will gone, disappear from the world, nobody will speak about Shoah, nobody will remember the Holocaust, the third generation and the fourth generation they will not know about the story because there is no grandmother, grandfather, and the awful things that he said there, that 5 years from the 2016, he said 5 years from now, there will not be a lot of survivors, and the anti-Semitic is just growing. And he was so worried and said, believe on one thing, we have a country, we have a Jewish country, Israel. So don't think that if you live outside the country, you are safe. All the time, be in touch and be in focus. And don't believe that everything is good because, like my family, they thought that this is not something that's spoken. There is some guys, Hitler, that make. They didn't believe that they are going with this tramp to the awful camp of these disasters for the Gazim crematorium. They just think that they are going to vacation. Most of the Jewish family believe on this vacation trip. And that's a saying to all the Jewish. You live in Mexico, I live in Israel. I used to work in relocation in England and Denmark for 5 years. And I raised my children outside the country of Israel. But all the time I remember these words of my father, that when we have the anti-Semitic every day, we hear about more and more affecting Jewish. Also in America, it was in Europe, but now it's also in America, United States. Remember, there is just one Israel, that country that's safe and the place for Jewish. When we were being in the Auschwitz, he said, there was not a country. Nobody helped us. The world was
silent.
And now it's different.